I can only see a patient for 15 minutes and it doesn't do any justice to the patient. I have not probably eaten my breakfast or lunch post-call, and it's not doing any justice to my health as well. And when I left his care, I was like, I'm done. I don't think I can do this anymore. I was employed at a GP clinic for a year. 6 months into it, I was like, I don't think this is going to work for me. I learned how not to run your clinic by being in the GP clinic. The finances were handled by someone who's not able to handle the finances. In fact, I was charging them more on consultation rather than giving them medication. TPAs will try to dictate and say, you can only charge 20 ringgit. I left the GP clinic was because it was getting too boring. I was still very much curious about functional medicine. As in, there was no name for it at the time. Find your niche, or else it's going to be very difficult. I've seen a lot of GP clinics shut in this past few years. Doctors only look at the patients. They don't look at the surrounding, the environment, the food and all those. The blood group O was more prevalent with the diabetes and hypertension. When the animal is stressed out, and when you are having this animal, you are actually eating a stressed out being. And that's going to translate into you also not having good fats in your body. There are almost 7,000 different peptides. I think 30 approved by FDA. That these are new modalities where people can be less dependent on pharma and more dependent on the body's ability to recover and repair. So for doctors out there who are thinking of lifestyle medicine or functional regenerative medicine, why do you want to get into it? Is it purely because of sales, money, whatever? You end up doing the wrong stuff.
Join Disruptive Doctors.
I'm Dr. Selina, your host and co-founder of Disruptive Doctors. At Disruptive Doctors, we're building a platform to help doctors like you impact healthcare differently. In Postcall, we dive into the untold stories of doctors who are breaking the mold, trailblazers who are redefining what it means to be a doctor. This is Postcall Beyond the White Coat. Welcome to another episode of Postcall. Today's guest is Dr. Shashi Kumar, co-founder of the Kale Sky Clinic, a pioneer in blending medical science with holistic wellness. See, many of us doctors in public healthcare sector eventually will reach a point where we wonder whether we are truly improving healthcare delivery. We come to a crossroads, and for some of us, this means starting up a clinic. And that's exactly what Dr. Shashi did. Hi, Dr. Shashi.
Hi, Selina. Thank you for having me here. Good afternoon. I like how you call yourself. What's it called again? Postcall.
Postcall, yes.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
It's basically, you have the pre-call jitters, then on-call stress, and you do this on red alert, and post-call is where you wind down and and you can reflect and think about what
call you had, and then like what to do next. Like you're done with it. That's it. Yeah.
Correct. So, Dr. Shashi, what drew you to medicine in the first place?
That's a question that I have to revisit back again. Like what? I graduated when I was 2009, and then I started medical school in 2002, right? So it's like a 6 years thing that I did. Why did I get into the whole field of medicine in the first place? Well, I think at that time when I got into the field of medicine, and now, why I got into it, I probably got an answer right now, because there was a lot of influence of parents in it. My parents were not doctors, but my mom was a nurse. My dad was non-medical personnel, but he was someone who had a lot of metabolic issues at the time, right? And growing up, watching him, how he was and all those, it kind of exposed me to a lot of the world of medicine. My father was someone who was undergoing kidney dialysis as well. And a lot of people my age at the time, when I was like 11 or 12, wouldn't know what is dialysis, and I knew what it was and how it works and stuff like that. Also, I used to accompany my dad to dialysis on days that I was at home after school. So there was a bit of an exposure there, and a bit of like visiting my mom's peers and colleagues in the hospital where she was attached. That kind of like made me feel like, oh, there's something different here. That, like when you're young, it gives you a bit of a different motivation. And then all those were the factors, I guess. Naturally, I was a bit more inclined to learn something more it was going to be either veterinary or medicine, general medicine. So I kind of swayed towards the human side.
Okay, so what was it like when you first started? I mean, you graduated, you came back, you got into housemanship in Klang GH. It's an insanely busy hospital. That's like the place that nobody wants to go.
Yeah,
What was it like when you
I didn't
first?
want to go there. I didn't want to go there. I was, in fact, when we applied, right, when you have this, I forgot what they call it. We have this 2 week government program where they have you going for induction, whatever, and all those. Yeah, and then during the time you apply for your placement, and I applied for I can't remember where I applied, but I got police, and I was like, whoa, I don't want to go to police, and then I was like, then my friends were like, oh, you're in HKL, would you want to come to HKL? And I was like, okay, HKL. So I applied for HKL, and someone from HKL wanted to go to police, and I was like, okay, let's switch. And then I got a letter for HTA, and I was like, this is not what I wanted. And in fact, whenever I passed by Klang Hospital, and I was like, I was told, and I was in medical school, I was like, do not go here. And I was like, okay, I won't ever step, into this hospital. And there I was, I got placed in HTA. And when I got into that was probably like a huge shift. That's when I realized, looking back at it, where there is not much of an industrial training for doctors, like how engineers go for industrial training exposure, IT personnel go and hang out with the IT companies and whatever and get exposures from there. And they do actually welcome, even lawyers, when they are having their semester breaks, they actually work with some law firms and they get a bit of an exposure. When it comes to hospitals, when we have attachments we used to have summer attachment breaks. And I did get attached to some hospitals at times, but it doesn't give you the full extent of what you're going to face. And at that point, I was like, what did I get myself into? Because it's not what, there was no exposure to this. And when I got into it, I knew the on-call system and all those, but I have not experienced it. So when I got into it, and I was like, oh, this is crazy. And when I started off, I think the department only had like around 10 to 12 housemans. So it was on calls every other day. It was an EOD call thing. And the thing is, somehow you end up working till 7 p.m. That was one of the first department I worked for was obstetrics and gynecology. And I was like, whoa, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is already tiring, but I'm going on 7 a.m. the next day and then 7 p.m. So you go back on your post call. And I was like, this is like really, really mad. Right. And then it didn't help much because I was traveling from home. My mom was like, this is madness. How do people work 36 hours and all that? I was like, this is a part of it. And I don't think that it's going to change much. But then like, I have to do this. This is what I got into. And at that time, I didn't really have like a focus on what I wanted to do because of my first department. And then I went on to medical and then was surgical. Surgical was the one which kind of really, really brought me to a point where I really want to do medicine. Like this is what I want to do. There was a lot of teamwork. There was a lot of, how do I say? There was a lot of teamwork. I look forward to having a good team when you're working, right? You need a good team for you to properly function during the on-call time, all right? Without teamwork and without your friends there, and I don't mean friends by just having friends when you are with your peers, but also having a good relationship with the people in the lab, having a good relationship with the nurses, having a good relationship with the seniors, and that helps out a lot. So that teamwork I noticed more when I was in the surgical department, and that actually brought me more interest towards medicine. And they had some sort of a holistic approach where they were very OCD on post-surgical care and how the patient recovers, and they were very meticulous with that. So that played a big role in what I wanted to do as well. But there were already burning questions inside me pertaining to NCDs and why people have to constantly be on medications. I don't see any difference. These were all questions there, but there were no answers, right? So this was what actually I felt at the time, and surgical was the department which made me a bit more meticulous in my work.
Well, so it sounds like I mean, there were down times for me as well during housemanship, but the times I actually enjoyed working as a doctor was when I had a very good team, a team like your colleagues, your other housemen who you can depend on. You know that if you cannot finish this, somebody else is going to come and help you, like so that you can go home in time. Post call, there is so many. I mean, there were a lot of instances I had very good colleagues as well, and that gave me a lot of like drive to continue working, but there were also times, I think during my MO shift where I had nobody. I was all alone. And those were the times when I actually really, really did not enjoy working.
This was when you were in the hospital, or were you in a different setting or anything like that?
It was when I was in hospital. Yeah, when I was in a different hospital, different departments, I could see that those times when I was at MO and I started to not have the team I used to have when I was a houseman, like that
Oh, yeah.
camaraderie.
So now you are someone who's making decisions as well, right? So the perspective has changed.
Correct, correct. Yeah. So what after that you went to Sabah? What was it like?
So yeah, so then I completed housemanship and clang, and then I was lingering in anesthesiology for a while because I was quite focused on doing something surgical. And general surgery was something that I was looking into. So then I was like, you need a bit of anesthesia exposure, and I liked how anesthesiology was, where you intubate people, because I chose the path of going to anesthesiology instead of emergency department because I was lucky to have the choice. Like at the time, there were choices given, like you can go to ED or you can go to anesthesiology. And I was like, okay, that was like my first batch. That was the second batch of people where they introduced into anesthesiology. And I was like, I think I'd rather go to anesthesiology where I can learn how to intubate slowly, better. Not like any other department in Klang. It's not like an ED. It's almost like an ED every other department. So I was like, and I didn't really like the ED setup. And I was like, I'll just rather go to anesthesiology. And I wanted to learn how to dilute drugs as well. So that comes in very handy nowadays. So I was there for almost a year and a half before I got transferred to Sabah. I requested to be transferred to Sabah. And when I got to Sabah, I requested for surgical department. I was like, you can send me to surgery in any part of Sabah, no problem, right? Because I've heard so many good things about the exposure that they get being a surgical MO in Sabah. So I was like, you can send me to anywhere, Tawau, Sandakan, name it, I can go anywhere. But they gave me two choices: one to go to a district hospital in can't forget where is it, Kinabatangan, and the other one was ONG in KK itself in Likas. And I was like, Kinabatangan, I can't do anything there. And I was like, I don't really want to go to ONG, but they were like, we are asking you to go to ONG at this point because we don't want anyone to go to Kinabatangan. Was just like a second thing, and I was like, I had no choice. So I was like, okay, I'll go and sit down in ONG for a while. And when I was there, I was like constantly like, can I switch? Can I switch? I was asking anyone to switch with me. In 6 months in ONG, and I was like, someone wanted to switch from uh, emergency department in Likas, where they focus more on emergency department, but they focus more on PITS and ONG because it was a PITS and ONG hospital. So women's children's hospital in Likas. So I was like, all right, switch. 6 months I was in A&E Likas, and they focus more. A&E Likas also focuses more on flying medicine, where they get topper from Sabah Airways, if I'm not mistaken, and then they pair up with the hospital team, and they have aviation medicine where they bring patients from the rural areas to either three hospitals in KK. So I was in that team for a while, but I was mainly more in the ED setup, and it gave me a bit of an exposure towards emergency department because I didn't do my emergency department. So I was like, yeah, all right. And I loved it there because the team there is really amazing. Emergency department team was, they really, I still hold a high place for them in regards. I hold them really high. They really do participate a lot in how, from the time the patient starts, the PPKs. They had a fantastic team in ED Likas, and I was there for a year and a half.
Yeah, you know what? From what you just described, right? I realized that if you're given something you actually enjoy doing, you can really go far. But the problem is, I think a lot of us do not have that opportunity to really dive into that specialty that we enjoy. So it kind of makes us maybe just give up on the whole profession and that ideology of becoming that kind of doctor we want.
Yeah. So initially, I was a bit bitter because I was also I subscribed to the MRCS papers and books, right? So I was reading for that, and then I was like a year and a half there, almost 2 years there. And I went in 2013. In 20 end of 2014, I was like, I think I'm done here. I don't think I can get any surgical. I tried to apply for the surgical department in Sabah itself. It was very hard to get because they kind of retain the housemaids who were interested, and they are not going to give much uh, what do you call this, importance to someone coming from Semenanjung unless you get into the department directly, and that's your luck, right? So then I was like, not really someone who wants to go to into emergency department, and my head of department was pushing a lot of us to do specialty in emergency medicine, and I was like, this is not my thing. I do not enjoy doing this. I really want to go to surgery. Even in smallest cuts and lumps and bumps, I'll try to do whatever in the ED when I can. So then I was like, I think I'll apply back to Semenanjung, and I'll try to apply back to Klang. This time I really wanted to go to Klang because I really love the surgical department there, right? And I was like, I applied to Klang, and guess what? I got HKL. And I was like, this is not what I wanted. And I know when you go to HKL, you get into surgical there. It's mostly, they have more focus on the master's students, right? And it's a vascular surgery place as well. And it was not a very good training ground for service animals. And I was like, then they offered me neurosurgery, and I was like, this is not the surgery that I want. And then I had a friend, and then the only thing that I can depend on is having someone that I know in a department. And my friend was there working in orthopedics, and she was there in orthopedics for the longest time. And I was like, since I already know someone there, it's better to go to a department where I'll have some backup. And I was like, it also gives me a bit of a exposure towards a different kind of surgery. Maybe I might like it. In the housemanship time, during the housemanship time, I kind of like orthopedics, but it's not really something that I really fancy. But it was okay, since it was still some sort of surgery, right? But then I was like, okay, let's do this. And I was in the scale surgical, was already doing some fixations, wires, plates, some exposure already there. But then I still, after a year and a half, and I was like evaluating, and I was like, nah, this is not my thing. This is not what I wanted to do. And there were already questions, right? Burning questions in my head, right? In regards to preventive part of medicine. How do I like get people off medications, diabetes, hypertension, and all this, the basic stuff, the basics, the things which actually disturb the Malaysian population. All of us, most people would have this, you have come across. And you've seen in KKs how the queues line up long. So I wanted to get into the root of trying to fix DM and hypertension. And this is the main thing I want to play with. Even before I was thinking of cancers or whatever, I was like, get to the basics. Reducing inflammation, reducing DM hypertension, probably even reversing it. And then at this time, New England Journal of Medicine came up with the reversal of type 2 diabetes. And I was like, physiologically, you know that it is possible. And I was like, there you go. We've spoken about this. And I was like, more keen towards that. So even when I was in housemanship time, going back to that, I didn't get time to work out much. I would love to, because there's no time. You know how it is. There's no time to work out. So the time that I can get, I didn't even play football. It was just very tiring. So that is one thing. What I try to incorporate is the diet, right? To a point where I realized that my friends were copying. So there's a person who sends food to the hospital. You can subscribe to them. And I was asking for a certain specific diet, which was high in protein, more fibers, and almost no rice, very little rice, and no bread. And to my surprise, a bunch of my friends were actually ordering, and they call it my diet. Like I was like, oh, I didn't know I was influencing a bunch of people to eat the way I eat. And I was like, okay. So then they started eating the way I eat, and that was the only way that I could keep myself in shape. Like gain weight exponentially. So that was already all there. And when I left HKL, my resignation, I was like, I'm done. I don't think I can do this anymore. I told my boss, and I was like, I'm leaving. And that is when we actually already started the Chaos Sky Clinic, but Roland was the only person there at that time.
So, Sashi, can you walk us through like what made you decide to hand in your resignation letter and leave the public healthcare sector to start up your own clinic?
So in 2015, I handed in my resignation. The last posting I was in orthopedic HKL. At that point, I was like, look, I'm not in the department that I want to be. And then I don't think that I've been here for a year and a half. I'm not falling in love with orthopedics. I don't find it, I don't fancy it enough. But the thing is, I was still very much curious about functional medicine. As in, there was no name for it at the time. I didn't know there was something called functional medicine. What I termed it as was like more towards preventive, getting to the root cause, and based on that. So then I handed my resignation, and I had no exposure to working in a private setting before. The occasional locums here and there, yes, but that doesn't give me a management perspective of managing a clinic. So I told Ruben, the Sky Clinic was already running, and I said that before I could join, it is still new. So I think one person should be enough to run the place. So Ronan was running the place. And I was employed at a GP clinic for a year. I signed a contract for a year to work in a GP clinic, but then I realized fast into 6 months into it, I was like, I don't think this is going to work for me because I knew the gist of how it works, how management was. In fact, I learned how not to run your clinic by being in the GP clinic. So I
Tell us
learned
about that. Like how not to run a GP clinic.
you have to be involved in the clinic. As in, like, if you are the person who is working there and you own the business, it's best that you be there and you manage the finances and whatever. Because I saw a lot of financial, the finances were handled by someone who's not able to handle the finances, and I was like, what? This is really that is a major glitch. And if you are not there monitoring, and the thing is, if you're running a business, you got to be a part of learning everything. You got to be a part of learning the accounts, stocking, stock management. And the thing is, I don't know all this, right? Working in the public sector, it was a good perspective on that level because I didn't know. Whoa, this is all what I'm supposed to do. Especially the month to month accounts of the clinic, how it's run, stocking, ordering, yeah, all those things, right? So I never knew that aspect of running a clinic. So I got to learn from there, and I learned from people's mistakes, right? So that was the first thing. I was like, okay, this is where I understand on this part. I saw how many mistakes and errors were done, and I was like, okay, it was good enough for me. I halfway through my 1 year contract, I told my boss, I don't think I want to work here anymore. It's just I can't sit down and see cough, cold, and flu. It's very boring for me. I don't like this. And I was actually sitting down and talking to patients more than what the other doctors were there were doing, only two of us. And I was more towards lifestyle management and telling them like remedies, how you can do stuff. And in fact, I was charging them more on consultation rather than giving them medication. And they liked it because at the end of the day, the incentive in working at the clinic was you get a pay and then you also get an incentive for certain sales target, right? And I was not fancy. I didn't fancy much of the sales target thing. Initially, it was. Then I was like, whoa, if I got to target that, I got to give them a lot of medications. And I was like, that's against what I like to do. I like to minimize and work with more of a lifestyle alteration and stuff like that, as opposed to putting them on constant medications and antibiotics and whatever and all this. So yeah, so on that aspect, my boss was okay. He didn't want me to give too many medications to people, but he was okay with what I did. And he was also accepting that I was charging slightly higher than the other doctor for consultation because I see them on a regular basis and a longer consultation time. So that also I learned to pick up from there because the one thing that I didn't like working in the public sector was when I have the clinics going on, I can only see a patient for 15 minutes and it doesn't do any justice to the patient. I have not probably eaten my breakfast or lunch post call, and it's not doing any justice to my health as well. So those are the reasons why I actually left the public sector, and also another reason why I left the GP clinic was because it was getting too boring. I didn't like that redundant thing again, day in, day out, doing the same thing. I used that time period and it was also quite a new GP clinic, so you only get traffic in the evening. In the morning, not much. Afternoon, pretty much empty. So I was using that time period to learn a lot of things in terms of business management. I didn't go for an MBA or anything like that, but I learned a lot online. And I was also using that time period to actually learn a lot of things in terms of history, where I'm a bit of a history buff. So I was using that time where I didn't have a lot of time during this tenure in the public service. So I was using that time to actually catch up on things that I've left out for a long time. So
So how
yeah,
can like GPs navigate through this? The consultation fees. There's a cap to it. You can't charge too much. It's only like what 30 ringgit, 50 ringgit.
it's now 20 ringgit because most of these TPAs are now owned by a lot of these TPAs. I think the major TPAs are owned by a certain firm which also runs the clinics. They also hold a lot of these clinics. And when you are under someone's jurisdiction and when you are under someone's power, you have to play by their rules, right? So we at the KL Sky Clinic, I was like, nope, I'm not going to take any TP. We used to have someone called Break Alert, and I used to get all these unnecessary MC hunting people, and I was like, cut off. I don't need this. And then I don't want to have any insurance panels because they want GPs, right? And I don't do GP stuff. So I was fully into functional medicine. So the GPs don't really, the what do you call it, the TPAs don't really work well with that. And they will try to dictate and say, you can only charge 20 ringgit for what? For like an hour and a half or an hour of consulting. I don't think that works. So, and they've actually not allowed for some blood tests to be done as well. They say that this is not covered, this is not covered. So the patients that you get are also going to be someone who's not looking to improve their health, but someone who's just like trying to like come there for an MC or just a basic blood test. And you make your niche. All right. So for GP clinics, the only way that I see out of this is to be original with what you do in terms of talking to your patients, how you interact. And in fact, you have to upgrade your knowledge. A lot of GP clinics complain about how pharmacies do blood sugar tests, cholesterol tests, and all those, and they're like, oh, they are doing this and all those. Well, in fact, a lot of countries around the world do not allow doctors to have a dispensary and dispense medications. The doctor's work is to diagnose and prescribe. The dispensing is done by pharmacies. So if the pharmacies were to go in the same line, they can complain about how doctors are selling medications over the counter or prescribing and selling the medications in their center. So this, I feel, also made the doctors to become less of a clinician and more of a drug pusher.
Is it the challenges you saw when you moved to private? One is like what you mentioned, sales target, and then now you have to push for drugs to make that sale target. So is that one of the challenges you see in private healthcare?
In GP, in non-specialty GP clinics, yes, they have to make somewhere something, right? So that is the thing. So if you are not niche, you're not specialized. I see some of them have gone into wound care and stuff like that. Fantastic. Find your niche. You have to do that, or else it's going to be very difficult. You have to be another GP clinic. And for my question is, I've seen a lot of GP clinics shut in this past few years, especially after the pandemic, right? What makes you different from the other person? You have to be different. You have to find your niche. Either you do things like wound care, you do another field which I'm finding and asking the young doctors, like everyone is jumping into aesthetics. Like, are you really interested in aesthetics, or you are really into the point where it is lucrative, where you can make money? And I'm like, all right. So my question to these people who are jumping into aesthetics would be like, why am I paying you the same amount of money to do a aesthetic procedure where I can pay someone who's 20 years in the business and is very, very well versed with the techniques and procedures? And why am I paying you the same thing? Why would anyone do that? And in terms of aesthetics, there are a lot of people who fly in from Bangkok, from Philippines, from a lot of people, even who are non-medical personnel, who are doing it hush hush behind, and it's way cheaper than what the doctors are doing. So it poses a lot of competition in that sense, right? So yeah, that is a competition for the aesthetic part. But then it's still something which is niche. They found their ground. The others, if you are not doing something different, then it's going to be just normal GP clinic. It's going to be very hard. It's going to be like a small pool of people that you um, uh, fish from. I mean, like that's the only bunch of things that you can do. There's a few things you're restricted, and you come under the jurisdiction of what the TP is and the laws that they impose on you.
So I've spoken to quite a few GPs and they all mention the same thing: attracting patients, retaining patients, and making ends meet. So what are your thoughts on that?
Exactly. My question is, what are you going to do to keep your patients coming back to you? As in a good way, as in like finding you to find a solution to their problems, right?
So why
Yeah.
why are your patients coming back to you?
Even my patients, I have patients who have been with me since maybe 2016, 2017 up till today. And if they have any issues, the first person that you call and ask or something like that is me. Even though if it's not, it's a surgical related thing or whatever, doctor, like, the trust that they've built with them. It has to be a genuine thing that you build with someone, right? So it cannot be hush hush. It cannot be like 50 in, 50 out. Like you have to be 100% in. Going to advise someone, you have to be well versed in that field. You have to be someone who's very knowledgeable in that field. You have to up your knowledge. You have to be there. So a lot of things, when I sit down and talk to my patients, sometimes it's not even about their problems, but I might give them something else, like a dietary advice on what they're doing, what might be causing a problem, and not only like giving them. The thing is, they don't come to me for cough, cold, and flu. They once them go through cough, cold, and flu, I tell them they know that they can go to a GP clinic and get that done. But if it's like prolonged, it's something really bad, and then they probably might come to me, and then I think I solved their problem, or else they would have gone somewhere else. So my approach is very holistic, not very pharmaceutical. I might use. I'm not saying that I don't use pharmaceutical medications. I do. That's why integrative medicine is a part of functional medicine. So you integrate, right? You integrate with TCMs. You integrate with Ayurvedic medicine. You integrate with traditional herbalist, homeopathy. You integrate everything inside. That's how functional works. Actually, you have to integrate everything. So I might not be an expert in everything, but I do have people in their respective field that I refer to: a Bowen therapist, a chiropractor.
So how did you like stumble upon this? I mean, was there something in particular that happened that got you down this path? Like for me, I stumbled upon functional medicine, understanding integrative medicine, complementary medicine, only because I became a patient at one point. I was diagnosed with Graves' disease and I started to have to think about my own health. And that's when I started to change the way I see medicine, the way I viewed conventional medicine, and started to want to take more proactive approach with my health. So how did you stumble upon this?
As I said, I think earlier I was telling you how I saw my dad go through dialysis and whatever. And my parents became a bit more strict with what we eat and how we eat sugars and all those. So that early intervention by my parents and telling us like, look, limit your intake of sugars and fast food, blah blah blah, whatever, and all those. And they kind of made us eat at home, and like they were more careful with what we ate. But despite that, I was someone who was overweight and obese all the time. Despite being someone who was very active, playing sports throughout my high school and even primary school, I started gaining a lot of weight after 15. When I was 19, I was like 120 kilos, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So, and my question at the time to myself was, why? I mean, like the breakfast that they gave you, and I had a dietitian's advice, and I was like, a doctor told me that I should lose weight, and I was like, dude, I'm like really active. I'm like playing football. I'm like someone who's very active doing everything, but I don't seem to be able to lose weight. But I don't know why, and it didn't really bother me at the time. Until I went to med school, and within 2 years, I went from 120 kilos, 118 kilos to around my lowest weight in my life was 68 to 70 kilos. And I
And
was
how
like,
did
just
that happen?
at that time, I didn't know how it happened, but I realized like I cut down on eating a lot of rice. So I used to eat like at one sitting probably like minimum two servings of rice, a lot of rice, and it was just very high carb kind of food. And I was very picky on my food, and I think when I went there, it came as a shock because I couldn't find food as easily as I would find in Malaysia,
In Russia,
and
you?
yeah, I couldn't find food as easily as I could in Malaysia. Like you can just go out and buy a burger. It doesn't happen there. And the weather played a big role because it can get really, really cold. So I think most of my fat was burned because of that. I had to keep myself warm. So I think I burned a lot of fat that way. And then I also unknowingly implemented eating a lot more meat. You can't get veggie there. So portion of rice control, more meat. And I probably eat like once a day, huge meal. And this was a time when people have never heard of OMAD or anything like that. It's just that I ate more meat, lesser carbs, very cold weather, and I also played sports.
Would you say
So
you were forced into doing all that because you moved from Malaysia to Russia to
yeah,
study
yeah,
and the
yeah.
inaccessibility of fast food
Food,
and
yeah. And I don't really eat much fast food. I'm not a fast food person even when I was in Malaysia. It's just that frequent eating. So my way to deal with stress was probably to eat, like eat to deal with the stress. That was the thing. A lot of people don't know that they use food as a way to overcome stress, right? So I was probably using that, and I cut down on that. And I don't know, somehow a lot of things, leaving your family, going very far away, getting used to the surrounding, very cold. It was the first time I left the country, and immediately I went to a different climate country, and it was quite a shock lah, when I was
Were
19.
there many obese people in Russia?
Oh no, zero. In the place where I lived, almost none. I've never seen anyone obese.
So would you say that the environment actually really played a big role? Because think about it, in Malaysia, obesity is a real issue here. So many obese patients. Just like in 2013, right, I was working in a clinic kesihatan in the middle of nowhere, a community clinic, and I was seeing a NCD patient, a diabetic patient, diabetic hypertensive patient. I had this one particular lady. She's probably 120 kilos, and I was trying to tell her to lose weight, like what you said. I said, go exercise, lose weight. And she said, yeah, doctor, I'm not even eating a lot. Kan sikit je. And she asked me, what else can I do? I'm already walking in the park and all that. So I thought, okay, maybe I should send her to a dietitian.
Right.
And the dietitian was 100 kilos also. So that I was just dumbfounded. I was like, okay, I have no idea how to help this, because this was back before I even thought of food as medicine or or what exactly diet means, and functional medicine and integrative medicine.
Mm. Yeah, you're right. So that's also a problem until today for me. I have a whole team of people, but no dietitian that I can work closely with, because they don't take into consideration food avoidance based on my recommendation, which is not just recommending blindly, which is based on food intolerance test that I've done. And food intolerance means that it's not like you're gonna get a allergic reaction. Food allergic reactions is different. But intolerance is your body's inability to break down this properly. And what might that lead to is a stress in your gut. And that means that you're probably going to store more fat in your body, right? Poor breakdown of this. And I go through that, and I see it in myself after the pandemic. I realized that I had started eating too much of carbs, and I gained quite a substantial amount of weight. But also I pushed a lot of weightlifting in the gym as well. So that I'm constantly experimenting with my body. So then I realized I got a hold of food intolerance test, and now I can tell people, like, look, your body is not able to digest this properly.
How do you tell that someone's not able to digest certain food?
We can get a DNA test done, swab, a buccal swab, send, and then we can even do a blood test to be sent to see local foods which are not suitable for you. That is a better test, in fact. And it's someone who I knew who did a thesis on this, and they came up with this test, and they now have it in InnoQuest. You can do it. So, but just blindly sending them to do this test and then not being able to tell them, to recommend them what to eat, is going to be a problem. So my take on that was, initially, before all this started, I read a book, and also a long time question. You see, the thing is, being doctors, right, are scientists, and you always have questions. So my questions to everyone at the time when I was still in the public service was few things. Cholesterol was a big myth. I was like, I didn't believe, because there was something going on which I think physiologically, when I learned physiology, it was different. And when you're learning in the hospital, it was like, when you're treating patients, it's different. And I was like, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. That's first thing. Second thing was the diet that they serve in the hospitals. And I was like questioning them a lot. I don't think they really liked how I questioned a bunch of things, because doctors only look at the patients. They don't look at the surrounding, the environment, the food, and all those. So I was like, hey, wait, hang on a second. You have to look what is going on around the patient. You are in the surrounding, you are in nature. These things are going to affect you. So, yeah, so I started questioning a lot of things. So these questions had no answers. The first one of the other things I questioned was, why are humans divided mainly into four? I know there are so many other subgroups, but main blood groups, which are four. And then people told me, oh, it's because susceptibility to a certain type of disease. Then I was like, I looked up on the data, and there was nothing. I was like, everyone gets everything. Infectious disease, non-communicable disease. It's not dependent on anyone's blood group. But I did stumble upon one data, this was a long time ago, that the blood group O was more prevalent with the diabetes and hypertension. And I was like, something there. And that was like almost like 10 years ago. And then after almost 6 to 7 years, I stumbled upon a naturopath's study since the 60s till now. His son is continuing to do it. And it was based on the blood group and what people could eat. And I was like,
Could you give an example? Like what, say I'm a blood group O, which means I'm susceptible to diabetes.
Yeah, no, because you have a strong digestive enzyme, and a strong digestive enzyme would be underworked when you are eating too much of carbs. Carbs doesn't require you to break down. Um, I mean, such a strong acid to break it down easily. And when I said I love history earlier, so we also go back to anthropology, and we look at what initial humans, blood groups were, and primitive blood group humans, like the Inuits of Siberia, the Aborigines of America, and the Aborigines of South America, and all those, most of them were blood groups O, right? And I started researching more into it. I was like, oh, so the Aborigines didn't, they went and hunt seals, they ate more fat, blubber, meat, and they were people of big bones and big structure, and they were very tall, and the modernization kind of dwarfed them, right? So I was reading a lot of these books, and I was like, okay, so that's history, and that's not research, that's history. So when I'm looking at that, and then looking at prevalence of diabetes and hypertension in countries which eat predominantly in South American countries which eat a lot of carbs and all those, it was higher because a lot of South American countries, like the Uruguayans and the Paraguayans and the Argentinians, they love their steaks, and the level of obesity was lesser, and their levels of Argentina had a higher percentage of cancer. So a lot of people link cancers to eating a lot of meat, red meat especially. And I went into that and I was like, there must be something wrong in this data. So then I went into researching into what they start feeding their cattle. And when the urbanization happened, the Argentinians fed their cows, the Uruguayans fed their animals with more processed corn and also soy, which cows are not able to digest. So it puts the animal into a stress perspective, and the animal gains a lot of bad fat. So when the animal is stressed out, and when you are having this animal, you are actually eating a stressed out being. And that's going to translate into you also not having good fats in your body. As opposed to what Australians do is when they feed grass fed, they add barley and they add um, wheat, which is a type of a grass plant, and animals, cattle is able to digest that properly. So it
So it
plays a
sounds like a very long, uh, like it's not just about what you eat, it's about what your food
what
eats.
you eat. Yeah, no, simple thing. If you are having vegetables or vegan, whatever, imagine being sprayed with pesticides all over it. You're going to eat those pesticides. Simple as that. So if you are someone who's like a carnivore, you're having more protein in your food, your animal eats bad stuff, you're going to get the bad stuff. It's a chain. We are always in food chain, right? It's what goes into you has to be from somewhere, which is also those things eat, right? So all those things are coming finally to you. So this is what the researchers of red meat link to um, higher cancers do not see. They do not see what these animals actually eat, right? So, and the prevalence of cancers in the Inuit people of the North Siberian region and Finland and all those had almost no cancers, nothing. The people who live in the Norwegian, northern fjords and all those where they have more fish and all those, they had no cancers. They were all eating more uh, natural sources instead of farm sources. So there was no cancer in that. The more cancers were related to the people who were eating more farmed meat, especially the ones which are fed with corn and soy, GMO soy, GMO corn. That GMO is going to get into the animal. The animal is stressed out. It's going to get into you. So it's like not simple to get into that. And I find it hard to find any dietitian who's able to relate and find that this whole thing is because of my interest in history, anthropology, and all this. And it plays a huge role um, now, today, in my practice. So that's how I implement this.
How should doctors approach this? Because this is very interesting. Like I've okay, I like I mentioned, I was sick. When I got sick, I started to, you when you get sick and you're on the other side of the coin, right? Before this, as a doctor, I just prescribe medication and I don't care. It's been practiced for decades. This is the way to go. This medication for this disease, and I remember when, I mean, we've been told that diabetes cannot be cured. You can only manage it, and you can only manage it with OHAs, insulin, basically lifelong medication. And that was drilled into me since I was in medical school, where I was a houseman, MO. It was drilled into me until the point only when I became a patient, I had to stop to think, no, wow, this is probably how the patient feels. So disempowered because you're so reliant on medication. There's nothing else you can do. Right. And that was only when I started to see, like, is there anything else? I started to explore hypnotherapy. I started to explore food, changing my diet. And honestly, I think I've never felt stronger in my life right now,
Right? Yeah.
knowing all this, even though I've aged significantly. I mean, like, biologically,
Biologically,
chronologically,
yes. Yeah.
chronologically, I've aged, but biologically, I actually feel so much better. So, how should doctors, like, really, in this time and age, like, how should we be approaching medicine or all these diseases?
First of all, I think, like you said, like what you did, you implemented that into yourself before you could tell that to people. All right. So you got to walk the talk as the first thing. Right. So for doctors out there who are thinking of lifestyle medicine or functional regenerative medicine, first of all, why do you want to get into it? Is it because you find it lucrative, whatever? How genuine you are with what you approach is going to be the answer for retainability of patients, of trust, and all those. Right. And that means constantly putting yourself out there to get new information and learning new ways of treating people. Right. My new venture would be peptides, using peptides. I don't think not many doctors out there in Malaysia. I don't think that many doctors out there would be able to explain about peptides. And I am like very, very into peptides, and I almost watch it like every other day. I'll be watching about some peptide going on right now.
Can you
Right.
explain what is this peptide?
Well, peptides have always been there. Peptides are I mean, your body makes peptides, right? So we do have amino acids, which then have a carbon bond, then they become peptides. Before they become protein structure, they are peptides, right? So, but using peptides itself, your insulin is a peptide hormone. Your most of your hormones form up to become um, 2 to 50 chain peptide hormones, right? A lot of your hormones are peptides as well, but they are more complex. But we're trying to use simpler, maybe 2 to 28 or 30 chain um, formations of amino acids, which become peptides. And now they are very famous because they kind of fix, it's like a puzzle. It's like a puzzle like Tetris where it kind of fills the block instead of trying to fill it in with a cement or whatever. It doesn't fill it in. So it's like Tetris blocks which kind of form properly and they just blast and then it fixes. So I'm trying to explain it in a more simpler way. So these peptide blocks, there are so many different peptides right now. There are almost 7,000 different peptides, right? I don't know all of them, but there are 60 which is approved to use by FDA. I think 30 approved by FDA. The other 30 is still going on approval process because you can't, how do I say, you can't patent peptides. They are protein molecules. So pharmaceutical companies are finding it hard to put it under them and say that, oh, I discovered this. You can't. It's not discovered. It's something which is naturally occurring in your body. Now that we've just harnessed it and used it in a better way, instead of your inability of your body to produce it based on what you eat. Again, what you eat, what you do, and all those will determine if your body is able to produce this certain thing. But now we want it in more, how do I say, more potent. The potency needs to be higher. For instance, one of the most simple to use and potent peptides out there is something called BPC 157. And BPC 157 is produced in every part of your body, right? But the ability to produce diminishes as you age. Aging process doesn't allow that to happen. Now, if I were to give someone BPC 157 in a certain dosage and I titrate, it is something which is super. The studies now, in fact, from 2021 show that mice which were clamped their coronary arteries, sorry, not coronary, sorry, your carotid arteries, and they induce some ischemia to the brain. Induced ischemia could be reversed, and almost their brain rewiring or restructuring of the neurons was super fast once they were exposed to BPC 157. So basically, stroke patients who are taking BPC 157, you could see neurodegeneration, degeneration reversing, and probably starting new neurostructures, neural bonds being formed. And that is amazing news. It's also something which is also going to improve on vascular endothelial system, and it's also vasogenic. So can you imagine putting someone on aspirin and all these thinners for a long period of time, it's more causing more gut issues and all those. And it's just something which is not going to repair the function of the brain, right? Neural. In fact, stem cell therapists will tell you that it's very hard to regenerate neurons. But with DPC 157, they saw the function of the neuron getting better and also very potent in terms of vascular genesis. So that's
How
one.
does one, I mean, is it readily available here?
At the moment, it is not available here yet. You can get it from the US, and you can, if you know how to use it, you know how to use it. It can also be used for people who have had ischemic heart disease, who I see now a prevalence of cardiomyopathy, myocarditis, and all those. That will work very well. One of the things which is very, very famous, I think, if you go and tick your cosmetic creams or whatever, you can see a peptide. There's so many peptides inside there, right? One very famous peptide is called GHK copper peptide, right? So that, in fact, works in a way where it's going to be very good for hair growth, for skin, and also improve blood flow. So if I were to give someone BPC and then give them GHK copper peptide, well, instead of hair growth and facial collagen restructuring, you need collagen to function throughout the body, improve joint pain, no more joint pains. BPC works for joints as well. Long-term joint muscle injuries, you can use BPC. Orally taken BPC works for stomach, restructuring the stomachs, the gastro lining and all those, improving in the mucosal surface of the stomach so that people don't, suffer from gastritis for long term. Also, GHK copper peptide works for people who have had an ischemic heart disease as well, because it allows for new, collagen restructuring. You have to understand that collagen is around throughout the body. People, when think about collagen, you only think about the face. It's your joints, it's your nails, it's everything, right? So these are new modalities where people can be less dependent on pharma and more dependent on the body's ability to recover and repair.
Okay, so now I want to like increase the collagen in my face, have my hair turn black again. What is the protocol what is the protocol for all this? And because I'm also I used to be a weekend warrior, I'm always pushing hard for sports, and now it's no longer pushing hard. Now it's climbing at my best performance without getting injured.
So for anyone who's into sports, workouts, whatever, you're gonna have wear and tear. That's gonna happen, and sometimes this might put you down as well. So I'll tell these people, look, you have to have a bunch of things, not only in terms of peptides, simple stuff like a cryotherapy, a cold plunge, hot sauna, meditation. That it works. If you do it, it will work very well for you in terms of calming you down. Other things as well, not only on peptides. So these are the things that you need to do for you to continuously do what you do. So like on weekends, I play badminton on Saturdays. I have football on Mondays or Wednesdays. And I do get injured. I recently had a groin strain, so I had to go to my bone therapist to get it released. It's going to happen. You shouldn't be deterred by these things. Rather not do it, because you'll get rusty. And when something, well-oiled machine is not running, it could be a Ferrari, it could still get rusty, right? So you got to keep doing it. Now, in terms of having my old injuries, my scapular injury, whatever, PPC worked like magic, taking it over a month. But I don't think not many people will be able to inject themselves. But people find themselves injecting Ozempic just like that. Ozempic, semaglutide is a peptide, right? Liraglutide, your Saxenda is a peptide. That's also a new age peptide that the people are using. They can just inject themselves with a pen. So I find that not a reason for people not to take peptides. Some peptides can be used inhalational, some peptides can be taken orally. Most peptides will be subcutaneous injections. So if you want to do something like just say more towards the skin and hair and collagen, copper peptides work amazing. Either you microdermal abrase it on your skin, or you put it subdermally or around your scalp. You can use it as a topical cream. A lot of creams use copper peptide. If you have a lot of gastric issues, you can go with something called vasoactive intestinal peptide, which is a nasal spray, which helps a lot with people who have constant bloating, gastric issues. It repairs the gastric lining as well. But there are also do's and don'ts when it comes to this. You have to be aware of how much you can cycle and do it. Yeah, so I'm getting into that as well.
So, like doctors who are interested in this, how can they find out more about this?
Go and read up, go and watch the YouTubes, go and watch clinical studies, what they're used for, how it's done. You can go and do all the clinical research and studies, PubMed, NCBI, so many platforms that you can go and search about this. But if you want to know what these are and you're interested in this, I would say that go to a YouTube, watch um, Huberman's podcast on peptides. There was this guru who everyone goes to for what's his name again? This Australian guy who has the Walk of Fire and all those. I forgot his name. Yeah, he explains about. He's a business guru, so he talks about peptides in his book, and that's how my friend came and told me, like, look, this guy he talks about peptides in his book, and I was like, yeah, and that's when I was like actually getting introduced to peptides as well. This was like probably like a year and a half ago, and
Is
I
this
was like,
all legal here?
uh, what is legal? It's not known. They don't know about this. They don't know
As
about
in,
the
the
existence.
authorities do not know whether this is in
Yeah, they
like.
don't know about. They don't know about. Right. So you. The thing is, there's no one doing. Semaglutide is a peptide which is being used right here right now. Saxenda. Yeah. So they have already been using it, not knowing that it's a peptide. It's a GLP-1 peptide. So if you want a melanotan, even for people who are having suppressed libido, more natural way, melanotan or bromoglutide, PT141, so many names to it, inhalational, not injectable, safe, no problem to use. In fact, it increases so people who have a lot of stress also a lot of have a lot of fear, and that's playing on the limbic system, your amygdala. So to alleviate that, you can use PT141, and it works not only to increase the libido, but also it makes you feel happier. Your dopamine receptors are much more receptive right now. So
Okay,
so many
so like
things.
a lot of, I think this is what I found out like when I spoke to the GP communities, when they offer something a bit more to their patients and you get complaints from maybe a competitor down the street, they may complain to the authorities that, oh, you're practicing something beyond the norm. How to navigate beyond this?
All right, simple. I would tell them that, yeah, of course, I don't want everyone to get into the peptide game right now because it's very, very early in the days. I don't, I don't want someone just jumping into the peptide game so fast. Get to know the very basics. The peptide game is, I would say, like right now, if for GP person to get into peptides, it's like basically upgrading yourself from a motorbike to a Ferrari. That's the upgrade that you're looking at, and we don't want to go there. Look at a smaller upgrade. Get to know compounding pharmacies. Do you know that most of the issues with people just see gastritis, right? And it's most of the times people, oh, Gaviscon or whatever, which alkalinizes the stomach and all those. To a certain point, you can go and ask all your patients, like, do you get bloated after eating? Yes. So it doesn't work. So what is actually the root cause of the problem? It's actually stress causing the diminishing mucus layer of the stomach. So that's one thing to handle. So you want to manage their stress, get them to use ashwagandha, right? That's one way. I'm just showing. So once ashwagandha is already used, the stress is better, the digestive rest. Instead of fight and flight, they're now in rest and relax mode, playing on the parasympathetic nervous system instead of just being in the sympathetic all the time. So that's one thing. Instead of just putting them on antacids and stuff. So it manages the stress. Or if it's not stress related, it might be dysbiosis or gut microbiome imbalance. Put them on good probiotics, prebiotics. That works very well. I've done that to my patients, and they're like, "Whoa!" And these are not illegal; these are all legal stuff. You can get in Malaysia, right? Use that. Immediate pain, vomiting, and all those. You can still use your GP medications to suppress all those, but on the longer run, you can give all these kind of things. There's one way, all right. And then your patients are not going to complain. Why would they want to go and complain to someone when they already feel better? In fact, they're going to go and tell their friends to come and see you. And then on top of that, this is actually a digestive enzyme issue. You don't have enough digestive enzymes to break down your food. What do? Get a compounding pharmacy to make you digestive enzyme pills. If you don't have digestive enzyme pill, yourself, try it out. Go and get from iHerb. Try it yourself. And then my patients who had chronic gastritis have not come and seen me like in a year. They'll come back for a yearly blood test and they'll only come back to me.
Sounds like you've built quite a reputation, trust, and you've okay, everything that you've mentioned, right? It's something that we've never learned in med school, never taught in med school. While we're training, practicing, it's not touched. I recently spoke to a GP doctor, and he mentioned something very interesting. He still assumes those functional medicine doctors as pariah of the medical fraternity. What are your thoughts on this?
Think of it as whatever you want to at your peril. Because at the end of the day, if look, functional medicine is to me, integrative medicine is to me putting down your ego and telling people I can't do everything, which is the truth. Doctors can't do everything. And integrating the surrounding of what you have, like your neuroacupuncturist, your general acupuncturist, your Ayurvedic, homeopathic people right there. Because my question was to why I want to integrate was, what were humans using 200 years ago? Not everyone was falling dead like flies like now. They were using all these modalities. This is the question that I asked myself, and I found this questions answered when I look at neuroacupuncturists. When I had very bad back pain, like a scapula was moved, I went to a bone adjustment therapist from France, and they're here. And they actually have a fraternity where they constantly upgrade themselves, and they know about the sympathetic nervous system better than any doctors, I think, and how the whole spine and which facets actually play a role. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know this. Doctors go down the ego lane. I'm a doctor, I know everything. Do that at your peril.
I think that's
That
a
is the
very
thing.
good, that is very, I mean, it struck me because at one point when I was practicing, it felt like I must know everything in medicine. If not, I'm a failure as a doctor.
But
But
also when you're
knowing,
hospital, you know when to refer to which person. Same thing here.
yeah, so knowing that it's a continuous upgrade, continuous upskill, even our medical textbooks, they expire every 5 years.
Yes.
Knowledge will we need to keep upgrading our knowledge and learning what's the forefront of science instead of just relying on what was taught like 10
Sure.
years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah, true. And in fact, I'll tell them, look, my first basis was to go back and revisit my physiology and biochemistry. And most of your answers are in there. That's it. Nothing can change in terms of physiology. The basic physiologies are already set in stone. Nothing much changes. Basic biochemistry is most of it set in stone. Your Krebs cycle, your gluconeogenesis is the answer for your keto diet. It's already in physiology. And
Okay, so previously you mentioned that you felt you weren't really creating any impact with, previously in the public sector and also in the GP chain. So how do you see yourself impacting healthcare differently now?
now what I did was I realized that in order for me to have an impact on this person needs to have questions. Like you had questions about Graves' disease. And this person who comes to me, they have questions on why is it not happening? For instance, I can give you an example where the mind body comes to play. So this is how it is. So I have one patient who's a very good case study example. I also have a very close friend of mine who is a how would I say? She's a psychologist by qualification, but she's more of a personal development coach, and she has a lot of she implies a lot of she puts in a lot of CBT and other things to work with a person. And I believe that the mind being the master has to be not changed, to be altered in order for the body to receive what it comes up. Whatever thyroid stimulating hormone, whatever, you can go back to roots being the brain where your pituitary gland is the precursor for it, right? So that on structure and secretion, but the mind in a consciousness way has to be altered for this function to be better, right? And we are still understanding how the human brain functions today. So this person came to me because she was not having a period for the past 6 months, right? This was like last year, 6 months of no period, on and off. Even before that was very, very poor because like almost like amenorrhea, very, very prevalent. Once every 2 months, once every 3 months. And then like how they diagnosed in the in the gynae clinic was they put her on OCPs. And I'm someone who's against OCPs, right? And I work with a lot of bioidentical hormones. But sometimes when it's needed, I do understand the need. But to me, without testing and knowing someone's background in terms of what they're going through emotionally, is not a good thing to put them on OCPs, because OCPs cause a lot of issues, especially with depression, right? A lot of female depression is caused mostly in the US. If you take a study done in 2015, it was mostly related to people taking certain types of OCPs. And the US is one country which is highly dependent on contraceptive pills, and Europe as well, right? And they did a lot of studies based on that. So this person was put on OCP. She didn't like it. The body was not responding. She is someone who's active, cooks herself, is a teacher, goes to school, comes back, works out, but she's not able to lose weight, right? And we all know that when the body is shut sexually, it is also not able to harness the sexual energy of the body to actually do a lot of other things. Our base is the sexual energy. And if you look at another thing is the whole chakra system, it starts off with the base, right? So the base is shut, everything is shut. I don't know much about that, but I believe that once you shut this energy, a lot of other energies are shut off. So based on that, I did a lot of tests on her, blood tests, simple blood tests. I noticed that it is a shutdown of the pituitary function. And she was already like in a menopause, but she was only 32. So I was like, this is not going to happen. So then I got to know more about her life, and I realized that she was the sole breadwinner. Her mother passed away. She has to take care of two elder brothers. So she has to be a man of the family. And I was like, now I understand how your body is shutting down the female reproductive system. It wants you to be more male, more man, right? And I was like, this is amazing how the body can do this, right? And if I were to put you on an evolutionary perspective, some amphibians and fishes can actually convert to become male or female depending on how many male and female frogs or fishes there are in a pond at a certain time, right? And we do have this evolutionary genes in us as well, right? But we can't just switch from being a guy to girl. But then most women nowadays suffer, and also men have a declining testosterone rate as well. I think everyone knows that, and also fertility rate. Women, when they take a role of man in the family, and I've seen a lot of PCOS cases, and what I notice is there's a shutdown. When you go to another doctor, whoever it could be, they're like, "Oh, you're going through menopause." How do you tell someone who's 32 having menopause? It's crazy. So what I did was I sent it to my CBT therapist, my friend, and she went through that for a good 3 months. I put her on inflammatory markers were good, so there's no inflammation going on. So I put her on bioidentical hormones to actually restart the reproductive system. And she found the courage to tell her brothers, look, I need to go out of this country to go and work somewhere. I can't do this anymore. And she did all the things that my friend or this therapist that asked her to do. And she was doing that diligently. Within 3 months to 4 months, flip. She started having a period back again. She started losing weight. Her HbA1c went from pre-diabetic to non-diabetic. Her iron levels improved with dietary changes that I did for her. And her mind was more sharper after the whole thing. So it's like a holistic approach. It's not a one trick thing, right? So you have to think in a multi-plane level. So it's not going to be very easy. So to get into this, you must be very inquisitive to how the human mind body works as well. So this is not something which is going to be very simple. So if you don't ask the questions, you're not going to get answers, right? So this is how I
I
would
think
advise.
this is like reminds me like when you first start med school, they always say ask why. But along the way,
We forget.
we forgot, especially during our trainings, it gets so tiring, and the load of patients that are coming, you just don't want to ask why anymore because you need to get them out of the room in 5 minutes.
Yes. So that is what I was not agreeable to when I was working. And I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, I was not able to do that. So I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, I was not able to do that. So I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, I was not able to do that. So I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, I was not able to do that. So I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, I was not able to do that. So I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, I was not able to do that. So I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, I was not able to do that. So I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, I was not able to do that. So I was like, there's nothing I can do. And also in terms of my ability to learn and research was, very, very, very minimal. Because I feel like when in the public sector, you are too tired to learn something new. I'll go back and I don't open the book. I'm like, done, I'm really tired. I'm like just busted from the days working, and I'm like, I don't want to do anything after this. I'll try to find other avenues, like watch a movie, whatever, blah, blah. And I was not keen to learn. And I find that to be something that was not making me happy, because I'm someone who's like constantly reading stuff and doing stuff. And while working with the public sector, that was not, and I was looking at my friends who were doing masters, and I was like, dude, how are you doing this? I was like, I can't do a 36-hour call and then like go for an exam the next day. And I was like, I know I won't be able to survive that. But being out of the system, and I was like, if you let me do my MRCS right now, I probably would do it very, very, very in a, a good way, in a more understanding how it works kind of way, rather than just digesting and memorizing. I hate memorizing. I want to know how it works, kind of a thing. So that is me. So I don't want to memorize stuff. It doesn't work for me. I want to know. I want to get to the gist of the issue, how it functions, how it works. So
Okay, so
yeah.
what's your advice for like doctors who, maybe they want to now start up a practice? Clearly, just being like what you mentioned, just being a GP is insufficient these days because there's so many that's popping up. And if you don't set yourself apart, you're just going to drown. You're not going to be able to attract patients and retain patients, right? Other than just asking themselves why, like those that are thinking of starting a GP practice or even going into functional medicine, like what's your advice for them?
What is your why? Like the question you asked me, why? What made you go into medicine in the first place? They should ask themselves in the first place, why would they want to do functional medicine? That why? And if you're doing functional, you have to be integrative. There's no escape from that. Once you are functional integrative, you also have to become regenerative, because you regenerate the function, right? So these are the things that you become. And why would you want to go into that? Is it purely because of sales, money, whatever? You end up doing the wrong stuff. I know clinics who are like, you are deficient in the iron. Sign up a package to get 5 iron vitamins, iron drips. Bang. Came to me with overloaded iron. And to chelate iron from the body, super hard. So, yeah, one way that I do to chelate iron is actually no medications. I tell them to go on um, just to give you a perspective. Celery juicing. Yeah,
Mhm.
amazing. So I tell women, do not do celery juices. There's something called oxalic acid inside that kind of chelates iron from the body. So I put my patient on celery juicing for almost like 3 times a week for 2 weeks. And then I tested again. It kind of dropped significantly. I told her, stop doing it right now. So if you don't know all this, then you are going to just be on the perspective of how can I sell more and get more money. You're not being genuine, you're going to lose out. You're going to go somewhere else. And again, you end up with a loss, not only of patient, but a loss of trust. And trust is the first thing that you gain from your patient. You can do mistakes. I'm not saying that I'm 100% bulletproof. I made mistakes as well. But is the way that you tell your patients, look, how you actually tell them to not say continue trusting you, but to tell them like, look, honestly, this is what's going on. I tell them like some things I cannot uh, understand. Like for 100 women that I've given progesterone to bring out the balance of progesterone and estrogen, because everyone is just like estrogenic these days, right? So bring them back into a progesteronic balance, not a dominance, but a balance. One of them came back with terrible bleeding, like clotting and all those. And I was like, she was quite angry. And I was like, you're the first person to get this. I don't know why it doesn't work for you. You are very, very estrogenic, and you are supposed to have a better progesterone, means progestation, that means a stronger, uh, what do you call this, womb and uterus and stuff. But somehow it fired back the other way around. So I tell her, look, I'm sorry about this. I don't know what is going on. Let's work on a different perspective. Stop your progesterone right now. And being able to take the hit is like, you don't have to pay for it. It's done. We didn't know that it's going to work like that on you. Never. I remember only one patient who had that issue with progesterone, no one else. Right. So you're going to have those kind of glitches. It's how you build that trust back again. Tell them to be honest. Like, this has never happened before, but be genuine when you talk to a patient. Be
I
genuine.
think I really like that.
Be able to tell the person that, look, it's what you did and it's not them. But at the same time, this has never happened before. Be genuine. If of course, if it has happened before, you want to give them a precaution. Like some of my male patients, oh, I want Cialis. It's like there is a 3 out of 10 patients who have leg pain after taking Cialis. And I used to tell them, if you are in that category, I'm sorry. I'm just going to give you like 5 pills right now, see how it goes. So I tell them, without knowing now, when I'm giving patients progesterone, just a replacement, I tell them, look, this might happen because it has happened once before. So just be very, very honest to tell them.
I think being genuine is so important because, now just surviving or making money in private practice is getting more and more competitive. And a lot of us lose our way, and some of us do lose our way, and we start to see the dollars and cents instead of why you became doctors in the first place.
Yeah. So I do tell young doctors that, look, the dollars and cents are going to be important, but always look at yourself like a musician. You might know famous musicians, bands out there, right? And I asked them this simple question. I was like, do you think Coldplay started a band because they can become rich? Not really. They know the dollars and cents are going to come in if they put in 100% into their heart and their soul into their music. And the way they want to do stuff is different. And just be yourself, but just be genuine. Do it. The dollars and cents will come in later. It's like being a musician. It's like your passion into it. Whatever comes from it is going to, no one is ever going to not give you if you solve their problems. People will come finding for you. Just be genuine and have that passion to do it, like a musician, like a band, right? Keep upgrading to your knowledge, and people love that. There's a lot of perspective. You don't have to be a general functionalist like me. You can be someone who's more towards gut function. You are just specializing in gut and all those. Get into that. You could be someone who's I'm more into hormones and balancing and stuff like that, and also NCDs. I don't work with cancers. There's some people who do functional medicine for cancers. Do that. There's so many ways that you can get, so many niche segments you could get into in the functional fraternity itself.
Okay, that wraps up another episode of Postcall Beyond the White Coat. I hope you found this conversation with Dr. Sashi as inspiring and engaging as I did. Until next time, I'm Dr. Selina. Take care and keep exploring new paths in healthcare.
Thank you very much.
Join Disruptive Doctors. Oh, Disruptive Doctors. Impact.